Mr. Greenberg, you said that the homicides on the whites were down. I'd like to dispute that, not in one way, that there are many less whites in the city at this time compared to what were living here 30 years ago. Also, the crime reports, the number of crimes that get reported compared to the number of crimes that actually occur, I think there's a big disparity there.
Yeah, there has been talk of that disparity, incidentally. That disparity, I spoke with a criminal analyst expert, feels that disparity is sort of equal throughout the country in terms of crime reporting. In terms of homicides, the number of whites in New York City during that period, 1977 to 1989, has declined by approximately 15%. The number of whites who have been killed has declined 47%, whereas the number of homicides in New York in general has increased 25%. So the decline in the white population doesn't even account for half of that disparity.
Okay.
I mean, certainly not even a quarter of it.
Anna, you're next. The phone number 391-2800. Go ahead.
Yes, first I'd like to tell you that my husband had an experience. He was going to Columbia University. These youths ran into the A train. They put a gun to people's brains. And my husband had also a gun put to his head, and there was robbery. My mother's been mugged. Her home has been robbed. We live in a very nice neighborhood. There's been a slew of robberies in the last 5 years. And I'll be one of the people that will eventually leave the city, and I thought it would never come to this, never. I'd like to say that in quoting your statistics, it's very important to emphasize that much of the crime that's being perpetrated on the blacks is being committed by them on each other. And I think that the leadership, the black leadership, has to honestly and frankly address this to find some remedies. The excuses of poverty, the excuses of this, I don't think will hold water with people anymore. Affirmative action, special programs, social services, Medicaid, much has been done by people to help along. Now, there's a very interesting article in This Life magazine on immigration, the cover. And the article inside tells about the immigrants, their hardships coming to this country. Many blacks who come from other countries work very hard. I have a practical nurse that I've hired to care for my mother. This woman works 2 jobs, constantly on the go. They want to buy home. They want to invest. They want to do. And I know blacks from overseas, from the islands, who are quite different. I don't understand the predicament and even the solution for American blacks. I think that their leadership must really be out front and open and address this, because people are no longer buying the excuses. And this is all I want to say.
Jonathan?
Yeah, the woman is right, the caller, about the fact that most crime does not cross racial grounds. I thought I mentioned that virtually all the homicides committed on blacks are committed by other blacks. Most homicides committed on whites are committed by whites, Hispanic on Hispanic, etc. Incidentally, I have heard from a number of people who are leaving New York now. You do see a exodus of people leaving New York because of crime. However, I spoke to some demographics experts, and looking at statistics, you see that there are many more people coming into New York than are leaving. And most of the new people coming in are Hispanic, Asian, and Caribbean American, African, and actually African immigrants coming in. The problem of what the cause of crime within the African American community is a very, very, very severe problem. It's hard to say what the answer is. Some people say it's the welfare mentality. Other people say it has to do with just the level of oppression and a type of historic oppression that has never been worked out of. Incidentally, however, I should note that in terms of crime and homicide, you do find that a lot of homicides are committed by Jamaican and Dominican drug gangs, certainly as much as by American black murderers.
Next call is Don.
Hello, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Listen, I would like to say the same thing that the lady just before me said a while ago. And the gentleman just talked about the gangs killing each other. Of course, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica. Yes, there are some Jamaicans here who is in drugs and they commit crime. But the fact remains that the leadership in New York City will not address the problem. They will not take the bulls by the horn and say what it is. We are killing each other, and it's all right for us to kill each other. It seems to me that's wrong. The mayor must take the bulls by the horn and do something about it. And the fact remains that the leadership here, the Jamaicans, for instance, let me say that, won't do the right thing, put them in jails forever, and let the decent people live.
Okay, next call, and that is Edna. My number, 391-2800. And I have on the Newsmaker line Mr. Jonathan Greenberg. Mr. Greenberg has written the cover story for the current issue of New York Magazine. It's on your newsstand now. It says all about crime. And on the cover is a taped-handled sidearm. It looks like a .38. Is it worse than ever? How safe is your neighborhood? Who kills whom? How New York ranks? The race factor, the drug connection, the most dangerous subway stations. 391-2800, and Edna, you're next.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I keep hearing all of the complaints that so many policemen are tied up in the precincts doing ordinary paperwork. Hospitals, homes, and other facilities in New York use volunteers to a great extent. Why doesn't somebody, perhaps New York Magazine, could start a drive to recruit, say, retired people or even working people who would be glad to donate time to do some of that paperwork and free the policemen for appearances on the street?
And that's a very constructive solution, I think, that especially since the people who do these backup jobs could very easily be paid substantially less than New York City cops, or perhaps do a volunteer corps. Joe Klein in New York Magazine wrote that New York could really use a volunteer job corps or a working job corps for unemployed people, in which they could take 5,000 people and have them doing types of work which would free up more cops. It is quite amazing how few people, police officers, are patrolling at any given time.
Yeah, but Jonathan, I don't think that the police department would want volunteers messing around with its papers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they might quite well be adaptable for other jobs. I don't think the cops would want a volunteer worker in their files, their prints, their mugshots, arrest records, etc.
Mm-hmm. There are particular, though, jobs and tasks, I should say, that really what's needed are eyes and ears.
Well, they have that. They have an auxiliary police force. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they don't have any power. They don't have the power of arrest. They're not armed. They are just that, the eyes and ears, and many of them witness drug sales all of the time. They can't do a damn thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, you're next. Michael?
Unfortunately, I'm an expert on the subject. The statistics that was quoted can be all attributable to, in 1982, the introduction of crack. And most people don't know that because the journalists used the word drugs, as you did, instead of crack. Because the good old days was when heroin was on the streets.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the media always uses the word drugs. The only three choices are either invade Colombia, legalize drugs, or bring the army into the city, because 75,000 police would not be enough.
I actually happen to, since I'm going to jump into or open up that can of worms, think that is true, incidentally. You do see crack responsible for the violent current wave of crimes. Robberies are up, homicide is up, assault is up. Those are all crack-related crimes. Burglary is down. That's a heroin-related crime, down from the high levels of the late 70s and early 80s. And I do think what we're seeing is a result of crack. And I've got to add something here, and I think what we're seeing is the result of the profit motive centered around crack and drugs. And I have yet to see in a society, and I know it's a strange. I don't know what the answer is, but I've yet to see when the state tries to get between the profit motive and the individual, who's trying to use that it seems very hard to separate those two things, between a buyer who wants something and someone who's making money selling it to them.
Jonathan, drugs are legal in many, many ways. You can get painkillers legally. You get all kinds of stuff legally. And you know something? The illegal black market is still there. Some drugs that are used as painkillers you buy over the counter at a drugstore, you can buy them on the street at 15 and 20 times the price, and business is great.
Mm-hmm.
You'll just have that many more people involved in the selling of drugs on the street, even though it'll be available at a drug center.
That you might say that I actually am ready. I think legalization of marijuana is almost a foregone conclusion in my mind and among the people who I speak to about this. I can't see arresting people for that. More than half the drug arrests in the United States are for marijuana. You know how clogged our court system is. You know how clogged our prisons are right now. I can't see putting people to prison for that purpose. So I'm not sure about the question of crack, to tell you the truth, and I know that's a persuasive argument. You might just have an increase in usage. However, I do think that certain drugs would do well to legalize right now.
I'm not going to argue. I would simply say the Chinese say that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and my one step is 5 guys who are selling anything you want on the corner of 41st and 6th every day, all day, a block from the studio. What do you want? You want Percodan, you want Demerol, you want crack, you want heroin, you name it, they got it. Now, it seems to me, while we're talking the highfalutin stuff about getting the drug dealers, why don't we round up these 5 bastards that are on the corner?
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Just show me that you mean something. Let's arrest them. I know about it. Everybody must know about it. They're there. They're doing a tremendous business.
Do you think that arresting them would be a deterrent from other people taking their place?
Sir. No, so then you arrest the next guys, and you keep it up. Hey, what the hell? If I cut your arm, why bandage it? It's just going to keep bleeding unless you coagulate very well. Terrible argument. At any rate, Jonathan, I thank you.
Thank you.
We're on WOR. I'm going to continue to take your calls, 391-2800, after this.
How you doing, Barry? Good evening.
Hi.
How you feeling?
Fine, thank you.
That's good to hear. Just a question to the gentleman that's with you.
He's not with me, but go ahead.
The demographic study that he said that there were people leaving, but there was kind of contradicting that there's people coming in. Did you understand that at all?
Yes, there are, and that is a fact. There are many, many people leaving New York, but more people are arriving. The difference being that the ones that are coming in as a workforce in generally menial jobs, and they're not going to provide the tax base that those that are leaving have.
Right, yeah. That's really sad, because, this city was once the greatest, and I honestly think it could be again if they could solve some of these problems. In reference to the other situation where you were saying just up the block from the studio, there's 5 guys selling drugs right up in the broad daylight.
Right.
It's time that we've done something to I realize that everybody's saying we can't put them in the prisons, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind instituting the chain gang back here for these drug dealers, because that's what they deserve. Give them a broom, a shovel, and let them clean up the streets. That's what they should be.
Thank you. And next, Al.
Yes, hello, Barry.
Hi.
I'm looking at the front page of New York Magazine. Of course, it's a great magazine. I was going to ask Mr. Greenberg the following question. What does he think, a threefold question, what does he think should be done? And does he think that the 2 clowns, David Dinkins and El Supremo Mario Como, have they done the right thing?
Well, let me read you about Dinkins. This is a quote. Mayor David Dinkins said today he will take to the pulpit in St. Patrick's Cathedral to call for regular observance of, quote, a night out against fear. The mayor said he will speak at Cardinal John O'Connor's annual post-Labor Day Mass on September the 9th and stress the fight against crime. He said he had planned to call the observance Night Against Crime, but changed it to Night Against Fear at O'Connor's suggestion because that's what he said we're really doing. The mayor cited various police programs to put more uniformed officers in the community so there will be a greater visible presence of cops on the street. He's expected to ask union members to organize observance in their neighborhoods and to develop anti-crime programs such as tenant patrols. And then it goes on. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think he's just doing a lot of talking.
I think
he's a great talker.
I think the people that are going to be in St. Pat's won't need the message. They're going to church. Obviously, they're not the people we have to impress.
Do you remember the Second World War? They said to praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. You know who wrote it, don't you?
I don't know who wrote it, but it was a great...
Frank Lesser.
Very good.
Okay, John, you're next.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
Regarding the 5 guys you spoke about, I think you should stop them any place, anytime, whenever you see them, and get them off the street. Even if you're just harassing them, get them off the street. If you will go through a traffic light, you get a ticket every time. And if they don't sweep up the streets and forget about it, the dirt will pile up. So you got to sweep the streets every day and sweep with those people every day.
For 7 days, I had the opportunity of sitting in for Gil Gross, who's on the air from 3 until 6 in the afternoon. And I would leave here at 6:30, 6:45. I saw them every day. I also saw them on the way to the studio.
You can go to the 42nd Street area, pass through on a bus, and you can watch bars all the way down the street as you go. And they also use the subways as a bunk.
I know.
The subway station. They run downstairs, they come up with it, they meet you down the block. I happen to get off the subway.
I'm reading Mr. Greenberg's report on New York, and you mentioned subways.
Right.
The subway stations. The number 1 station for crime is the Times Square station.
That's the one I'm talking about.
I remember once, a couple of times, I've said you could go to the Times Square station, you walk into the underground and yell, "You're all under arrest," and you'd be right about 80% of the time.
Yes.
They had 825 felonies in the last year out of every 1,000 riders. Is that something?
Sure.
Crimes per 1,000. 825. It's unbelievable. And the list goes on and on. There's Tremont Avenue, 125th Street and Nicholas Avenue, Fordham Road, 125th and Lexington, Roosevelt Avenue, Jackson Heights, Queens Place, 66th and Broadway, 72nd and Broadway, Columbus Circle, J Street, and right down the list, 86th and Lexington. And the percentages are unbelievable. The crimes per 1,000, 125th and St. Nick's, 14% per 1,000 riders. Then there's Columbus Circle, 6.25%. Oh, yeah, got to ride the subway. Ride the subway and carry a Winchester. We're on.
Stop all loitering. It'd be the first thought that, as anybody is loitering probably has no good purpose, and just stop them right there.
How are you going to stop loitering?
Well, there used to be a law. You weren't allowed to loiter.
We're on WOR. The number, 391-2800. What to do to stop crime. I'll read you a story in a minute when I come back about a fellow that tried to stop crime. He's dead. The phone number, 391-2800. You call, we're here. It's not a story, it's an accurate report. 2 men who came to the aid of victims in separate robberies in the Bronx early today, killed by the suspects. Police said in the first instant, a 28-year-old man who chased a 17-year-old thief that he saw steal a watch and a gold chain, shot to death at 12:10 a.m. in the Tremont section of the Bronx. And an hour later, just blocks away in Tremont, a 25-year-old gypsy cab driver tried to help another driver being robbed by a man and a woman. He was clubbed with a 2x4 and died of cardiac arrest. The driver became the 21st cabbie killed this year. Police said Victor Roman of 1160 Hoe Avenue followed a robbery suspect who had just taken a watch and a solid gold chain from another person to a vacant lot between 1135 and 1145 Hoe Avenue. A gunman shot Roman in the back at his shoulder. He died at the boulevard. Police recovered the gun in a vacant lot and a .357 Magnum on the roof of a building adjacent to the suspect's apartment. At 1:22 a.m., a 25-year-old gypsy cab driver, not identified, spotted a robbery in progress as he drove along Washington Avenue. The driver stopped at Washington Avenue and East 164th Street. Police said a man and woman were trying to take a car jack from the driver of a car from the Webster Car Service. The driver got out of his cab, and the man clubbed him with a 2x4 twice in the stomach and once on the back of the neck. The driver went back to his car and apparently suffered cardiac arrest. He died at Lincoln Hospital. Our life in New York. We are on WOR. The phone number, 391-2800. Eleanor, you're next.
Hello, Barry.
Hi.
Barry, listen, first of all, I don't agree with legalization of marijuana. I don't think that's the answer.
Nor I.
But I do feel that drug dealers.
Hello? Are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. I do feel that drug dealers should be tried and shot, and people who use marijuana should be sequestered and out. In other words...
You mean put the drug dealers to death?
Yes.
It'll never happen.
Well...
It will never happen in the United States.
We've gotten to the point of no return.
I know. It happens in the Far East. It happens in Singapore. It happens...
But you don't see it in Arabia, or you don't see it... really, it's... what are you going to do? What's your answer?
I want to give them the gray flight test. I want to take them to the top of the Empire State Building and see if they can fly.
Oh.
Okay? Thank you. It'll never happen. The death penalty for drug dealers, even if I were for it. I mean, realistically and pragmatically, it will never, never happen. Forget it. Ken, you're next.
Barry, 2 observations. I've been sort of extrapolating the data I've been hearing on your program and also from a New York Magazine article over the next 10 years. It appears to me that by the year 2000, we'll be looking back at the year 1990 as the good old days, as the practically crime-free days. I see what's happening is an apocryphal view of the city. By the year 2000, will either be a Detroit ghost town or about 8 or 9 armed camps dividing up the city. It just won't work. I mean, it's getting worse and worse.
Well, you see, I get bothered by... There's so many aspects to the whole discussion, but the one thing that bothers me right now, I've got the story right here. While city officials debate whether to increase the firepower of cops, drug dealers are arming themselves with a top-of-the-line machine gun. It's the futuristic-looking Calico M900 semi-automatic handgun. It fires 100 rounds in seconds. Okay?
Not okay, but I mean, that's where we're going.
We have cops who have a 6-shooter that they're supposed to use twice a year at the practice range. Most of them don't know which is the front end. I mean, there's an old joke in the police department. If you want to be safe when a cop draws his gun, stand directly in front of him, because he ain't going to hit you. But the fact is they're carrying 6 guns which belong back in the horse and buggy days. And the only ones that carry a weapon of any significance are those around the police commissioner and the mayor. A Glock. And it's ridiculous. They should be armed properly, and they should be using weapons with a lot less provocation. I'm sick to death of hearing about cops being tried because they use their weapons. We are on WOR. Joe, you're next.
Yes, Barry.
Yes.
Yeah, we got a ship in the water without a captain. That's the first thing here. And you know something? The worst crime ever committed against this city was making this wimp the mayor. And I'm 58 years old. I was born and raised here.
Uh-huh.
The worst crime. This wimp became a mayor.
Okay.
And we're going to head down a no-win road with him.
Okay. 391-2800. A word for the wimp. Kirk, you're next.
Yeah, Barry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question in relation to the drug problem. Since the majority of drug users in this country are casual white users, how is it that the drugs such as crack ends up, strictly confined into poor areas? I mean, if the motive was, strictly profit, wouldn't it make more sense to target, for your general users?
I don't know. I'm not following you. Are you saying legalize it?
No, I'm not saying. I'm asking you. Since the majority of drug users in this country,
I don't know who the majority are.
Well, the majority of drug users are casual users. For the most part, casual white middle-class users. Okay, that's the majority of users.
I don't know that that's so.
Oh, that's a fact. I wouldn't call you and state it. But it's a fact. But that's beside the point. I'm asking you. If profit was strictly the motive, wouldn't it make more sense to target? More or less to spread out your operation. How is it that a drug like crack is confined, into poor, and minority areas? if the majority of users and casual white users.
I've lost you somewhere, and I don't know where. I truly don't. Dorothy, you're next.
Oh, good evening. The only solution that I can see to the drug problem is to sell drugs in drug stores. In other words, legalizing it, and for many reasons that have not been mentioned. One is that children do not usually hang around drug stores, but they hang around corners where they are prey to others who want them to sell it, to be runners and so on. If children, little children, don't see it being sold, they won't see as much use of it. They won't be prey. The profit motive is gone. And they won't go into drugstores to buy it.
Ma'am, it really listens good. It sounds so easy. There's a motion picture around. I think it's called Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. And in the scene, the woman desperately needs a drug to cure a toothache. She's been a drug user, and she needs something really powerful. And her boyfriend goes to the drugstore. Her boyfriend, in quotes, he's really kidnapped her. He goes to the drugstore to get it. He can't get it. The drugstore says, try the street. And he finds it on the street. It's kind of indicative. There are drugs being sold in the drugstore, painkillers, which are legal, and also powerful narcotics. And you can buy them at a legitimate price, $30, $20, $18. And on the street, they sell for $1 and $3 and $5 each. You can buy any of them on the street.
But those are prescription drugs. Anyone who wants drugs now can get them. And the profit motive would be taken out of it.
But you don't understand. The profit motive is taken out because they're selling these painkillers in drugstores at legitimate prices.
But you need a prescription.
But you can buy them on the street without a prescription, and they are buying them on the street.
Yes, because there's a profit for the person who deals and sells. And the children are exposed to it. I don't want children being exposed to it.
Okay.
That's the thing.
All right, I thank you. Gloria, you're next.
Yes, I'm calling about two gentlemen who refer to Mayor Dinkins and the Governor Cuomo as, calling them names. I don't think that was necessary. I think the people who are name calling, they have very limited intelligence, because when Koch was mayor, nobody called him names, but because Mayor Dinkins is a black man, everybody is calling him names.
Well, what about
now,
Mayor?
I don't think that he got...
I don't think that I don't think that Mayor Dinkins should be called names, but Mario Cuomo is not black, and he was called a wimp as well.
But will you hold on a minute, please?
And as far as calling names, hey, I had my share of calling Ed Koch names.
But let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I don't think it is necessary, if you're going to have a question and answer period on the radio, to have the people calling names. Isn't
well,
necessary.
ma'am, I don't censor the calls. They say whatever they feel like saying. Okay? Thank you. We are on WOR.
Reeling from the morning rush? WOR gets you into the swing with news, weather, changing traffic, and more when it counts.
Down in Lower Brooklyn,
what we see outside is a drying situation.
Start every morning on a high note with WOR, the talk station.
For the new car or truck that you've always wanted, hurry to Flemington Car and Truck Country, where you can now see 17 different makes, every one of them backed by a $500 bonus if they can't beat any price quoted by any other dealer. Your choice greater than ever. You'll find Flemington, Chrysler, and Plymouth and Dodge, Nissan, the Ford, the Lincoln, the Mercury, the Suzuki, the Buick, the GMC truck, Flemington BMW, the Mitsubishi, the Isuzu, and the Mazda. And now the newest members of Flemington Car and Truck Country, the Flemington, Chevrolet, Geo, and Ditchman Flemington Pontiac Subaru. 2,500 new cars and trucks to choose from, friendly professional salespeople to help, factory to dealer incentives, selected factory cash rebates, and the highest trade-in allowance. Take a drive out to the country. Flemington Car and Truck Country, Route 202 and 31 in Flemington, New Jersey. That's 0.6 of a mile south of the Flemington Circle.
Now there's a magical reading course on cassettes called Hooked on Phonics, which makes learning to read simple. Simple because Hooked on Phonics is set to music. This way, kids learn phonics quickly, like a song. And when they master phonics, they can read and spell almost everything. So if you want your preschooler to become an excellent reader, or if there's an older student who needs reading help, call 1-800-ABCDEFG. That's 1-800-ABCDEFG.
We're on WOR, and so are you if you called the magic number 391-2800. Make the night sing. Sylvia, you're next.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
Fine, thank you.
I'm in total agreement with your sentiments and your feelings about crime. However, as you said in the end, es wouldn't helfen.
Yeah.
On a lighter side.
That means it wouldn't help.
Right.
Okay.
On a lighter side, I want to thank you so much for acknowledging and sending me your picture postcard.
Thank you.
And my best regards to your darling wife, Nancy.
Well, I must tell you, she deserves it because not only was she nursing me back to health for those many weeks and helping me on the broadcast, but I want you to know, immodestly, there were hundreds, thousands of cards that arrived, and she did all the addressing.
That's absolutely...
She did all the addressing. That's her handwriting on the address, and all I did was scrawl a quick message.
Well, I appreciate it so much, Barry.
Okay.
And I just hope you stay well.
Thank you.
And take care.
That picture, by the way, is going to be posted on the 42nd Street subway station, and they're going to sell darts 3 for a dime. Okay? Thank you. Frank, you're next.
Yes, I have sort of maybe a radical approach to dealing with the drug problem, especially with crack and cocaine.
Yes.
You know, there's Barry, they give alcoholics, there's a certain drug, I don't know if they're doing it anymore, it's called Antabuse.
Yeah. I don't know if they use it, but they used to.
Yes, it would send an alcoholic who was using this drug, if he drank, it would give him sort of a rum fit.
Yeah, but you know, it's absolutely true, but the fact is that those people wanted to kick the habit.
Yeah, well, I just used this as a prelude to what I was going to say. There are certain ways where we could infect the drug supply, the cocaine that we do interdict at the borders.
Uh-huh.
And my theory is that if we could infect the cocaine in this country and crack with something like, I'm not going to say rat poison, but certain biochemicals, and then redistribute it back on the street so that when the users take it, not that it's going to kill them, but it will make them violently ill.
Yeah.
And if we could do this on a large scale over a period of maybe several months to a year, I think it just wouldn't be worth it for somebody to take drugs like that.
Okay. Thank you. Pat, you're next.
Barry, welcome back.
Thank you.
Glad to hear you. I just want to make 2 comments. One about the ACLU and how they now protect the guilty party, quote, guilty. And it seems like the innocent person is the one that has to really fight to prove his point.
Who's that?
Pardon me?
Who's that?
The one who's been injured.
About anybody in particular?
No one in particular, but it just seems too often.
Yeah.
This seems to be. The other thing is this, if people are worrying about crack, this ice that's supposedly coming along, which is a combination of crack and heroin.
Yes.
And supposed to give them a couple days high.
Yeah.
And then they sink down. The mothers don't care about their babies, aren't feeding them for a couple of days, and they say they come out of it paranoid.
That's one of the great horrors of what's going on with the drug culture, are the babies that are AIDS infected and drug addicted.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of them.
And I think we have only begun to see the problems of these addictions.
What to do about it?
What to do about it? Oh, Lord, we have to get behind the judges and the cops being supported by the courts.
What do you do about the babies that are here? They're 3 months old, 2 months old, 8 months old. They're being born right tonight. Some are being born.
Taken away from their parents.
And do what with them?
We're going to have to set up something like daycare centers for them where we have not surrogate mothers, but people who will act as parents to these children, and perhaps it will only be during the daytime. But
okay. Thank you.
Right.
Marie, you're next.
Yeah, hi, Barry.
Hi.
You know, us New Yorkers, we usually call things as we see them. And the woman that called a little while ago and said she doesn't like the idea that we called Dinkins a wimp. Well, he is a wimp. And if it was Bush, if it was Kennedy, if it was whoever. And the sooner that these people wake up and realize that they're going against themselves and all their own children are getting hurt by all these drugs, and their leaders, if they would only stand up and call a spade.
You mentioned Kennedy. Did you read that young Joe Kennedy may come to New York and run for the U.S. Senate seat?
And let me tell you something, Barry, he'll probably win.
I think he might.
Yep.
Okay, next call from Stan.
Barry, you know, I've been listening to you for over a long time now, and we talk about these crimes. We keep talking about the symptoms. But you know what I think the disease is that we never really talk? Lawyers. We keep electing lawyers to the state legislatures and to the national legislatures, and that's like putting Dracula in charge of a blood bank. They keep passing legislation so that they don't lose cases.
Yeah.
And that is the core of the whole thing.
Okay, I now put you in charge. You're the police commissioner of the city of New York. Let's start with that. What would you do?
No, because the police commissioner carries out the laws that these lawyers write.
You're the mayor of the city of New York. How high do you want to go?
Well, first of all, New York deserves what it gets because they constantly vote Democratic liberal, and that is basically the history of Democratic liberalism. If you go to any city that consistently does that, like Philadelphia and all these other places, L.A. now, they are all Democratic liberal cities.
Well, they
have the problems.
You mean they have gang wars in L.A. because of the mayor?
They have gang wars because they have Democratic politics in Los Angeles.
L.A. has one of the toughest police commissioners in the world by the name of Daryl Gates. He is one of the toughest cops.
But it has a Democratic mayor all the time.
But he runs the police department. Believe me, as a matter of fact, the mayor was a cop. Mayor Bradley was a police officer and supposedly a pretty good one.
And a Democrat and a Democratic liberal. And basically, if you look at any city that's really in trouble, you see that they've had liberal politics, Democratic liberal politics for years and years and years.
Generally, I am a Democrat, and I certainly consider myself a liberal. My ideas don't at all agree with the ideas, obviously, of David Dinkins. I would handle the drug problem far differently, and police department far differently. I feel strongly that we don't have a police department. The city council, the school teachers, the firefighters, and everything else are all incidental. We ain't going to have them. We're losing our tax base in a hemorrhage, and pretty soon we won't have a town left. Hello?
Paying for the quality of life that they're receiving.
You're not listening.
What?
You mean what? What? Okay, next.
Have a pencil and paper ready for a phone number that could mean thousands of dollars of found money. The value of rare stamps and coins has skyrocketed over the past few years. You may have inherited a coin or stamp collection and have no idea of its worth. Call Regal Stamp and Coin Company and get a free appraisal. Call during the day 212-689-1919. Out of town, call 1-800-772-0054. Regal is one of America's largest stamp and coin dealers. They have customers all over the world and can afford to offer you prices that no one in New York can match. Remember, too, Regal also offers free appraisals on precious diamond and gold jewelry and gold and silver bullion. Find out by phone what your stamp or coin collection is worth. There is no cost or obligation. Call during the day 212-689-1919. Out of the area, dial 1-800-772-0054. Regal Stamp and Coin Company, 379 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Call in, stop by, or ask Regal to come to your home.
If you want to lose weight, a lot or just a little, there's a delicious, easy way. It is called Spicer's Crunchy Snacks. A clinical test, University of Miami Medical School. Those on a diet used Spicer's and lost twice the weight as those on the same low-calorie diet without Spicer's. A small bag keeps you full for hours. Spicer's Snacks. Delicious and proved in a medical school test. Spicer's spent years and millions developing the patented protein expansion process that enable them to create a delicious, real food that helps you lose weight. Spicers, 5 great flavors. There's cheddar and cheese and barbecue and even chocolate. Crunchy and delicious. All natural, cholesterol-free. Supermarket, drug, and health food stores all have it $1 a bag. Spicers, the delicious diet snack, keeps you full for hours. On WOR, I think the last call, Lee.
Yes, hi Barry. I just wanted to make one quick comment about the woman who doesn't like calling Mayor Dinkins names. Does she ever listen to the 2 black radio stations that are on in the afternoon and at night who say everything under the sun about white people and who have politicians on and so-called esteemed black people? Where is the FCC? That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Tomorrow night, if we get any reaction, I'm going to ask your comments about a lady by the name of Sinead O'Connor in New Jersey. She flatly refused to go on stage at the Garden State Arts Center in Holmdel, New Jersey, if the national anthem was played beforehand. Subsequently, they kowtowed, even though they've always used it. They did not play it. She went on, and now the head man, or the head woman, Emma Byrne, a spokeswoman for New Jersey Governor James Florio, said he would not comment on the controversy. I love that when they say he wouldn't comment. Another New Jerseyite, a fellow by the name of Sinatra, said he wished he would get to see her so he could kick her in the ass. That's a Sinatra quote. We are on WOR. Hail Sinatra, next governor of New Jersey. Florio, boo, hiss.
Thank you. I think the topic indicates it is a slow news night for Barry.
What?
I happen to think it's perfectly all right for the mayor to take a vacation.
What did you just say?
I just said it's a slow news night if you pick a topic
No,
like this.
as a matter of fact, I've talked about it a couple of times. In a little bit, I'm going to be talking with the regional commissioner of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, David Smith. He's the commissioner of the New York City Office of Business Development, and columnist New York Newsday, Mr. Dennis Duggan. The only slow part of the program is this. Thank you. James, you're next.
Yeah, in reference to the mayor going on vacation, how would you compare that with President Bush in Maine while the crisis is going on in the Middle East?
I think that President Bush's actions by going to Maine were catastrophic, and he obviously got the message because he rushed to the Middle East for Thanksgiving. That's my answer to you. Okay? All right. Thank you. Michael, you're next.
Barry, let's ask the important questions. Let's forget about the mayor's vacation. Let's ask him. Let's ask about what he's going to do with regard to the teachers, the raise for the teachers. Let's ask about what he's going to do about.
He hasn't the foggiest. He's going to tell you. He's going to tell you that he was a Marine. Okay? Thank you. In a moment, we'll take our next call after this. On the line.
Yes, sir. Commissioner, I live on 75th Street and 2nd Avenue. Within the last 3 years, in the area from 72nd Street to 79th Street, there have been at least 6 small stores whose long leases expired. In each case, the landlord wanted to triple the rent. And these people who had been in the area for years retired and went out of business. Those stores are now empty. And I would like to know whether the landlords get a better tax break if they keep the stores empty.
Well, I can't really answer that. I suspect not. I suspect that they're just waiting, hoping that they're going to get a better customer,
but Commissioner,
a better tenant for it.
If they have to wait 2 or 3 years, and I've seen a couple of people that have had vacancies for a couple, 3 years, they're losing an enormous sum of money, aren't they?
Well, I think what they did is make some miscalculation here about they thought the good times were continuing, and they got caught by a change in the market, and they may not do as well as they would have if they had just continued the old situation. But what happened, of course, was that a lot of the desirable areas of New York were doing great in the 1980s, and the landlords did have a policy that basically they would, raise the rents in accordance with what the market would bear.
Three times
At some point,
as much?
the market just wouldn't bear it.
3 times as much. It's called piggery. Okay, Lou, you're on the line.
Yes, I've served as the president of Brooklyn's largest business organization, the retailing field, since 1964. I'm now the chairman of the board of the Joint Council of Kings County Boards of Trade, and we consist of about 31 avenues that are struggling to survive. Every handicap has been offered us by both city and state. We have the highest sales tax to offer our customers. Looking at this photograph that you have on the front page of the story by Richard Levine in the New York Times today, oddly enough, I worked in the Gem Sporting Goods store when I graduated from college. I was hired by them to set up an inventory control in 1949, I guess it was.
Have the picture right in front of me.
There isn't a parking meter on the block. How can somebody go into a sporting goods store and carry out merchandise and walk through the creepy streets where every store is iron gated? When we do have meters, the city has they raised the price from a dime to a quarter, and they cut the hours from an hour meter to a half hour to 15 minutes to 20 minutes. People drive across the bridges where there is no tax. They load up with gasoline, and they come back to New York to spill their ashes or throw their garbage out after they've done their shopping elsewhere. We have no. In fact, the woman before me spoke about the story of the rising rents and the greedy landlords. We saw that up until the beginning of this year. Now the city got greedier. The city of New York in mid-January raised the commercial real estate assessments between 300% and 400%. I have a store in a neighborhood a block away from where Fred Trump has an empty lot that's been empty for 15 or 20 years, where garbage is laying on it. I get a summons of $50 when somebody throws a cigarette butt in front of my store. And my commercial real estate evaluation went up this year from $8,500 to $31,500 in 1 year's time. And this was done throughout the borough of Brooklyn and in the 4 boroughs beyond.
Commissioner?
But we have administrative fools running this city. They are pushing storekeepers out of business. I'm qualifying my remarks because I happen to be in business and I know what it's all about. They have litter laws. They have stormtroopers with coming around to these storekeepers with summonses that range anywhere from $100 into the thousands of dollars. I know one storekeeper that's going to have to go out of business, and these summonses have hit him up to $15,000. It's unbelievable. And that's why you have a lot of storekeepers that are going out of business because they're just on the brink of getting out. And you have fellows running the city that cannot understand the ramifications of these stupid laws.
Well, Al, I understand the problem you're talking about, and the question of sanitation and sanitation enforcement's one that my office deals with almost daily. I'd be delighted to talk with your friend and see if we can't be of some help in dealing with the sanitation department. If you'd have him give us a call tomorrow, we'd see what we could do. I mean, it is one of these constant dilemmas, and I don't think it's accurate to characterize the sanitation department as fools. They're caught. We all want clean streets, and we all want the city to look as good as it possibly can. And that's a responsibility that the city shares with merchants and homeowners.
Commissioner, earlier on when I was speaking with your contemporary, Commissioner Ehrenholt, he's a very nice man, and I mentioned the Transit Authority payroll, who are complaining about the fact that they have to raise the rates because they aren't getting enough money and too many people are beating the fares and so on. And then I ran down a list of some of the salaries that range from 34% increase, 23%, 15%, so on. Isn't that outrageous?
Well, Barry, I don't know enough about the salaries at the Transit Authority to comment on them in particular. I can tell you that by and large, the men and women who work in the public sector are being paid less than they could earn in the private sector.
Okay.
And in the city, as you know, we're going through a very painful process of cutting some salaries and freezing others and facing the prospect of layoffs. So this is hardly a place where someone who isn't committed to trying to do the very best job possible would be prepared to stay. Salaries
Yeah,
are always an issue.
I respect your point of view, and I don't think some of the stumblebums that are working for the TA could get $1 a week, considering the job they're doing. They certainly couldn't get it here in the private sector. In the private sector, you come up for election every Friday or every Thursday or every Wednesday, and if you're not doing it, out you go. Jack Zimardo, the chief maintenance officer, he was making $70,000 a year. He's now going to get $87,500, and this is in spite of a hiring freeze at the Transit Authority. And it goes on down the list, and it is shocking. A man by the name of Hennigan, he writes a column for New York Newsday, and he writes about what is going on in salaries, all throughout the system. It just boils you.
Well, I understand the frustration that you feel. I can only repeat that...
You want to punch the wall.
That is in the city of New York at the moment, salaries are not going up. In fact, they're going down. And...
Not in the public sector.
That's just... I'm sorry, Barry.
Okay.
The city of New York, the mayor has cut a number of salaries and frozen all others.
Yeah, 5%.
5% for some and a freeze for others. That's right.
Okay, and that's exactly why I brought it to Transit Authority. Anyway, let's go to the calls. Nancy, you're next.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Well, the marvelous 80s were not so marvelous for me as a disabled person. President Ronald Reagan, who I call Rotten Ronnie, I had to pay for 1/4 of my income. In Section 8, went to 1/3. And why? Because Rotten Ronnie wanted the money for the military. And that's why we're in the trouble that we are now, because the reason we have this deficit is because of the military budget. There's plenty of money, but for what they want, the Republicans, some of them. And the thing is this, what I feel that the military budget should be reduced to half, and it should go to the social programs. And also, what we should do is secede from the union and collect our own taxes. And we all have to do everything
You mean New York State ought to secede?
Absolutely.
And let some of the stumblebums that we have in office run the whole show? Are you kidding?
Well, I don't mean exactly that way.
I wouldn't let some of them direct traffic at a school crossing.
Well, but the issue is that we all have to get involved, and we've got to now prevent this war from happening.
No, I don't share your opinion on the military budget. I go back too far. I remember when we didn't have any military budget, and people were screaming, let's keep America out of foreign entanglements, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't work.
Well, Barry, I mean, your caller certainly makes a good point, though. During a period of enormous prosperity for the country,
no question,
the federal government maintained a policy of very large tax cuts for the most wealthy.
No argument.
And a very, very steep buildup in military expenditures.
Yeah, and
whatever one thinks about the expenditures of the 80s, it's clear that the Cold War is over, that we have won that battle. And it's now time to have a real peace dividend and bring it home and spend it meeting some of the kinds of needs that your caller talks about.
I was told earlier by your contemporary, your colleague, Commissioner Aronholt, about the great 80s in the city. And no one told us about it because we had fewer cops and fewer sanitation people and fewer school teachers, and people were leaving the public employ as fast as they could. How come nobody told us things were great?
Well, I think one of you, I've forgotten whether it was Sam or you, made the important point about the 80s, is that it really was, in some respects, a decade of missed opportunity. that
you mean the politicians didn't tell us the truth?
Well, I think the politicians did not, in the 80s in this city, take advantage of that period of prosperity to address the kinds of concerns which now, in a much tighter fiscal situation, it is almost impossible to address.
I told you earlier, I hoped we could blame Tokyo on Ed Koch, and we can't. But I can say one thing, we tried to get the mayor on the phone a lot for various issues, and he was always eating. And passing out. Evelyn, you're on the line.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
Well, I was going to talk about shopping. Now, I have a capacity to shop, and I love to shop, and I used to go to stores and buy stuff And now I do things by mail order. I check out the mail order catalog, buy one thing, see if the quality is good, and then I use them, like Land's End or LL Bean or one of them. They're not terribly overpriced. They may charge a few dollars more for shipping, but you don't have to have the hassle of going to the store, the risk of somebody stealing your money. The stores are so crowded with merchandise that, and the aisles are packed, and you can't get through them. And if they happen to have a sale, you can go crazy trying to find your size.
Boy, I don't know where you've been because I was in the store.
A&S is 34th Street. The whole you could hardly get through it, and then it's a hangout for all kinds of people who are going to steal stuff from you. And why do that? I shop a lot, but I don't shop anymore. I'd rather buy by catalog.
You agree with that, Commissioner?
Well, certainly one of the things which has changed the face of a lot of American retailing is the development of a very large business in direct mail. I think one of the things we've certainly seen it in this city, is that retailers have had to compete, and they've done it by changing their lines, by improving their sales.
And I understand that LL Bean doesn't suffer from shoplifting.
I don't know whether it does or not at that big store in Freeport, but I think we've seen the retail merchants in this city respond quite aggressively and successfully. And the biggest decade of growth in direct mail was the 1980s, but it was also a huge decade of growth in retail sales in the city. Just 1 year, for example, between 87 and 88, retail sales were up almost 10% in New York.
Al, you're next.
Yeah, Barry. Hi, Commissioner.
Hello, Al.
I see a very gloomy outlook for the next 4 or 5 years. There's so many bad things that are happening that I don't even know even if 5 years is the time. First of all, businesses are failing by the dozens. I live in Sheepshead Bay, and you can go blocks and blocks of businesses closing. There is a lot of vandalism. The taxes are high. There are so many illegal people opening businesses, not paying taxes, and driving the legitimate business people out. There's a whole flux. The city cannot do anything. They have no money, no inspectors, no control. My question is, where do we go from there?
Commissioner?
Well,
how do you operate a business without inspectors?
Well, we do have inspectors. Do we have as many as we'd like? No. And will we have enough inspectors and enough people on the peddler task force to deal with some of the issues in the near future? We won't.
How about health inspectors?
Health inspectors, we do quite a good job, and in areas that affect public health and public safety.
Not according to one report. One report told me that some restaurants haven't been inspected for years.
Well, I think that's an area, Barry.
And I think one of them is a coffee shop I frequent.
Well, you maybe should change your location.
They post a reward for cockroaches. Anyway. Last call from Helen.
Oh, hello, Barry.
Hi.
Hello, I'm an old fan of yours, and I have a tremendous regard for you. In fact, if you want to change where you have your coffee or wherever you dine, why don't you come down to the place where I have a tenant who has a restaurant? I'm the landlady.
Where's that?
It's between 60th and 61st Street on 3rd Avenue.
And what's it called?
It's called the Midtown Diner. Now, it's very clean.
The Midtown Diner on...
Yes, there's wonderful Greek people who've taken it over in the last 2-3 years.
60th
on 3rd Avenue, right up from Bloomingdale, between 60th and 61st. I own the building. I'm the greedy, horrible landlady.
Oh, you sound awful.
I'm terrible.
I'll bet your teeth are long, too.
No, not too short. But let me tell you something. Those people work like slaves, morning, noon, and night.
Yeah.
I've had tenants there for a number of years. Some years ago, I got very little money out of that building because they were on old leases. Let me finish.
I've been there.
Good. Well, I'll meet you there for coffee.
I've been there a few times. It's a long room.
Yeah.
And they have seating in the back.
Right.
And they have washrooms in the back and telephones.
No
washrooms in the back. Well,
upstairs on the second
That's
floor.
what's wrong with the joint. Some of their customers have a very, very pained look. They need washrooms.
Let me tell you something.
Go ahead.
it's very difficult to be called. It's insulting to call me or people like me a greedy landlady or landlord. I inherited this building from my father, who worked his tail off when he came from Russia and had a little paint store there, and then he eventually bought the building. And when he died, I got the building. And I didn't get much money from that building for years until 3rd Avenue began to be rather popular and attractive. They took the L down, whatever it was. So it's become, I had to compete with Bloomingdale's. Now, whoever's moved in and out of that space has had a tremendous amount of tax to contend with. So have I. The taxes in 5 years have gone from $30,000 to almost $53,000 a year. That's just the real estate tax. That does not count for the thousands and thousands of dollars this little restaurant has to pay. It's almost about $6,000 to $7,000 for water a year. Then they have innumerable other little taxes, but that's $53,000 a year. They have to pick up. That's part of it's part of the lease. They pick up part of that tax. Now the tax goes up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's pathetic because I don't want to see them go out. I like them. I've liked the people who've always been my tenants, and I happen to be a nice landlady, and you can go and ask the old ones.
They made a picture of you, Kim Novak,
I'm adorable.
the notorious landlady. I remember.
Brooke asked her go.
Boy, I want to tell you, and you're some kisser.
I'm a delightful person. You like me very much.
Okay, I know it.
I know your wife works up at the museum and all that.
Yes, she does.
And I'm not trying to do something unkind by calling you. I just don't want to be angry. I just don't like to be called a greedy landlady.
Did I call you a greedy?
You called greedy landlord.
No, I used the word hogs. I said
pigs, hogs, whatever
we ought
you
to
want.
have hog butchery.
No, you have no right to call small landlords. I mean, if Trump stepped on me, he wouldn't feel a pedal.
Let me ask you.
Yeah, ask me anyway.
These people that pay rent.
Yeah.
How do they make it on?
I do not know. And if you want to know the truth, I wonder if they're going to make it next month and the month after.
Commissioner?
Well, both of you raise a question that is of constant concern to us.
The first thing I'd like to know is where are the washrooms?
That the tax burden is very high. It's something that the mayor is addressing with a thorough look at our property tax system, which is you know. Barry, we have got a property tax system which protects residential property at the expense of commercial property.
What do you mean by the mayor is addressing it? He's saying, hello, property tax.
No, the mayor has asked the finance commissioner to undertake a thorough study of the 4 categories of property tax and to propose ways that it can be changed.
Does that mean
That's
reduced?
a political struggle.
Does that mean reduced?
We hope that it would mean that taxes on commercial property would be able to be reduced, but they can't be reduced unless we're able to make that system sensible.
Ma'am? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Now, the article in the New York Times today, I did read with great care. In fact, I cut it out to save it for posterity. But I happen to know some of the people who are involved in the interview. Why didn't the commissioner and Mayor Dinkins go to the brokers and find out firsthand for what's going on in the city? You know, who's paying what to whom and how and why, and the questions are there with the brokers. I mean, if they're going to be there any length of time, they may all be out of business in 5 days.
And I think the police commissioner ought to be there, too. And his first question ought to be, what city is this?
Yes, I'd like to know, Barry, because, you know, I tell you very frankly, if I go out in the street and after a half hour walking around the street and seeing what goes on, I want to go back into my apartment and hide. If I use the subway, I vomit because I have to step into feces and I have to smell the urine all over the place and peddlers everywhere. I'm sick of the city. I was born here and I love it. I'm so tired of it.
I do too, and I thank you for calling me.
Okay, Barry, I'm sorry to take up so much of your time.
I've been in your place, and it's terrific.
It's not my place.
It is terrific. Well, you know, you own the property.
Well, I do.
Incidentally, if you see a tall, thin picketer, that's me.
Well, I know. I'm dying to meet you personally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Commissioner,
Yes,
I've got to take leave of you.
Well,
I love the fact he's addressing the tax problem.
Well, we hope that you will love it, and we're going to continue to try, Barry.
Commissioner, you sound like a good guy.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
David Smith, Commissioner for the New York City Office of Business Development. And he does sound like a good guy. I wonder I won't say it. I won't fool around with development. We're on WOR. I don't know why he didn't play tennis at the Vertical Club and spend one of those economy weekends at the Rye Hilton with his lovely wife.
Yeah, well, I agree with you totally on that one.
I'm a big believer, Dennis, in the Lincoln expression, by the time a man is 40, what he is in his face. And I look at the picture next to your column of Daily News publisher James Hogue, who is truly a good-looking man.
Absolutely.
His brother Warren, whom I've known for years.
Yep.
Really fine-looking men. And Hogue is beginning to look like what he is. The good looks are disappearing. We're seeing meanness.
Yeah, I think for the first time, he is getting a taste of what this town is really all about. Tonight, by the way, Barry, it's an interesting development. I've always been puzzled from the start of this strike why the Chicago people and the Tennessee people who are orchestrating this strike, lockout, whatever you want to call it, never got to the final pin. They never got to the driver's part. They kept telling me early on in the strike, well, we're 9/10 of the way home. We got the paper published. The 1/10, I call the Grand Canyon, was getting the paper to the readers.
Right.
I see tonight in a late news report that they're going to meet Monday with the drivers. The drivers are the key to this strike, Barry, and it doesn't matter how many great writers you have on a paper. If you don't get the paper delivered, it doesn't matter. And they haven't been able to do that. So they made a terrible miscalculation, spending $30 million up front to prepare the guys to do everything except deliver the paper. And that, in the final analysis, is what may destroy that newspaper.
But the destruction I hear from George McDonald, who heads all of the unions, the Council of Unions.
Yeah, the Allied Printing Trades Council.
The destruction is what the Chicago Tribune wants, he says. Then they will escape from paying all of the closing costs, the pensions, the severance, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, there are so many different theories, Barry. That's, of course, one of them. Another one is that they want to reduce the cost and sell it the way Rupert Murdoch sold his paper, The Post, to Mr. Calico. He stripped it as clean as he could, and then Peter bought it. And then Peter continued to strip it. But there are so many different theories, it's hard to say. I asked the State Commissioner on Labor about this once, Thomas Hartnett, who's a very bright guy. And Hartnett said, I tell you the truth, he says, I don't think they have a strategy. And I found that hard to believe, but these recent days left me bewildered. Tomorrow they're losing one of their big advertisers again. They've already lost 3 big ones, Alexander's and A&S and Macy's. And then tomorrow I understand Newmark and Lewis are going to announce that they are not going to advertise in the news anymore. So the paper is losing incredible amounts of money.
What's it costing them?
We've heard anywhere between 50 and 100 million. It's hard to say what the costs are because the Tribune can fold the cost of the strike activities into its empire. They have paper companies and they have other media properties. It's a huge corporation.
Why would they do it?
Well, I think again when you listen to all the theories, and I don't know if anybody ever knows. Is it ideologically? Is it just pure ideology? Does a guy from Chicago feel that what he did in Chicago and got away with, he can do in New York, and if he doesn't work, well, damn the torpedoes. He went down fighting the good fight. I don't know. It's impossible to say what these people want. I do tell you this. I talked very early on to one of their inside consultants, a man you probably know named John Scanlon, who is a consultant. John said to me, can you possibly conceive of anybody walking away from an enterprise that has a $440 million cash flow per year? His answer to that was it'll never happen. But to date, I see no evidence that they're doing anything about this. I mean,
isn't Scanlon, and I've always liked him personally and professionally. He's been on the air with me many times, not recently. But isn't Scanlon the one that's floating all the horror stories about the union?
Oh, absolutely. John is in the pay of the Chicago Tribune. And his job really is to see that they get the best possible spin on the stories that are coming out. So far, however, I think as masterful as he is said to be, his campaign has not succeeded in the least. I think one of the big mistakes, Barry, was to put Lisa Robinson out front.
I was about to ask you about her. Where did she come from?
Well, she originally worked at a small television station in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She worked as a studio camera operator, and then later as a news reporter. And from there, she worked for the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, and then went on to work for Con Edison. Came to the news about 2 months before the strike began, and it began on October 25th.
Yeah, as what?
She came as actually to do internal communications. It was never conceived that she would be thrust in front of the public. So what you had really was an image of a woman who was not sure of her ground, and whose constant sense of bemusement, I think, irritated New Yorkers. New York, she lives in Westchester. I don't think New Yorkers like somebody coming on camera and smirking, while pickets are walking a line at Thanksgiving. It just doesn't cut it. And whether she did this consciously or not, I have no idea. But I know she's been pulled away from the camera, and she no longer will appear on camera.
What does she do now?
She's back to internal communications. I think there was a very damaging story by Amy Pagnozzi in the Post. It was a marvelous.
She had lunch with her, and I think Amy is terrific. But a line that I'm not going to even do that. But
well, there was one rather telling scene that Lisa brought up. She said that she enjoyed eating M&M candies at 3 p.m. every afternoon.
Right,
and that she ate them in color sequences.
Boy, now, what is that Freudian thing about?
I don't want to even think about it, Barry.
Unbelievable.
I'm not equipped to handle that one.
But what does that mean? I mean, there's got to be something very weird.
Yeah, that is almost beyond explanation. I think, you'd have to really talk to her therapist to figure out why she eats M&Ms at 3 p.m. and why she eats them in yellow, blue, and green combinations.
Amy's terrific.
She really is.
And now tell me, they've got a new... I called her the Stepford wife, and then Amy Pagnozzi called her a Stepford wife. I think it is very apt.
Yeah, the Ice Queen, the other name was Axis Sally. I know one day when I talked to Mike Katz, who was their premier boxing writer, who's now on the picket line.
Right.
And I talked to him, in fact, the day I went over to talk to Mr. Hogue after he appeared before that committee. And Mike said, I mentioned to Mike that there had been a discrepancy between what Hogue told this group and what the police told them. The police figures were so much different that one has to wonder about the veracity of this man, the publisher of the paper.
How's it going to end?
Barry, if I had to bet on it, I would say this paper is going to go down. I think it has been fractured beyond repair. I think it's very difficult to put together a team of professionals. In any instance, on your program, to get a producer, to get people who contact people to talk to get people to do the music right, the cues. It just takes a long time to put together a staff, and it took them a long time to put together a staff of great writers. They had a marvelous lineup of black, Hispanic, Irish, women.
You got
it. They had a marvelous stable of writers. Those people are gone.
Unbelievable.
Those people are gone. Newpill is gone. McAlery is gone. Gail Collins is just about gone. Marcia Kramer, as went over to TV.
Yeah. How's she doing, by the way? I haven't seen her.
She looked terrific. I saw her on TV the other night. She had some little exclusive, and she looked marvelous.
That is terrific.
Yeah.
How does Newsday do it? Why does Newsday above the fray and seems to be doing so well? Notwithstanding the fact that I can never find page whatever.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the complaints I hear quite often from people. The many jumps in the paper.
Why?
They're working on it. Yeah, I think it's just ingrained in that paper, and they're going to have to learn how to get the stories down to shorter, the way the news did,
to
get all those stories at one page. Why is it? The Newsday is a cross, really. It's not one thing or the other. Somebody, Gil Spencer, used to be editor of the Daily News, called it a tabloid with a tutu. Huh? And there's some truth to that, We're highbrow and we're lowbrow.
I love, what is it? What's the slogan? The news?
The Times is all the news that's fit to print.
No, I know.
And the news was Tell It to Sweeney.
Right.
At one stage.
Right.
I don't know if we have Truth, Justice in the comics.
That's what I meant. Truth, Justice, and the comics. But a tabloid with a tutu.
Tabloid with a tutu. Yeah.
I
So
love it.
we do the cops and robbers on the front page, and we do the ballet on the inside.
I love it.
So you get a full spectrum with Newsday. It's a different kind of tabloid. That's all.
It's a great newspaper, and my only problem is finding the continuation of the damn story.
Well, I know they're working on it. They did start a new index this week.
You're reminding me, when you say that, Dennis, of my earlier guest, the good commissioner. He really sounded like a very nice man.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, when he says the mayor is addressing the problem. And I get the picture of the mayor saying, hello, problem.
That's right. And then goodbye, problem. Tennis, anyone?
I can't believe it. I can't.
Well, it really said to me that maybe this man only wants one term, Barry. You know, he's in his mid-60s.
I think he's going to get his wish.
I think he is, too. And I've said this earlier, but it certainly seems to me when you walk away from a city for that long and that far away, and despite what Mr. Jones said, a phone doesn't cut it.
No way.
I mean, leadership is not provided through a phone call. Leadership is being out on the steps of City Hall. That's what leadership is to me.
Well, I watched Gabe Pressman a few weeks ago, and he had Rudy Giuliani on as his guest.
Yeah, Rudy has surfaced, as you know.
Yeah, I noticed. And if I were to guess, I would guess that Rudy is going to be the candidate again.
No question.
And he is going to make one hell of a campaign.
I totally agree with you. I hope that he has learned from his last campaign. He did make some mistakes, I think. But I think there's no question of it, that he is running. His people have been talking to everybody. Come on over and talk to Rudy. So he's obviously making another run.
All right, Dennis Duggan, I want to put you on the line.
Okay.
A columnist for New York Newsday. We're talking about the daily news strike. We're talking about anything you want to talk about with Dennis Duggan, who writes New York Diary 3 times a week. What days are you in the paper?
Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And so, as of the moment, you're wondering as to what you're going to write about on Thursday.
Correct. In other words, I have to figure out something tomorrow. I'm going to go into the office early and look over the menu, pick out something that looks good, and hope it works out.
And what do you think?
Well, I don't know. Usually, when you get stuck, you look at the court calendar. And there are a lot of good court things running around. You know, there's the end of the Jogger trial coming up.
What's your guess on how that's unfolding?
On the Jogger trial?
Yeah.
Well, I think the lawyer has made another terrible mistake. He's
Colin
trying
Moore?
to indict the whole white community.
Colin Moore?
Yeah, Colin Moore. I think, this has been a terrible presentation. I think this kid is going down for the count.
Yeah. Okay. My phone number, 391-2800, Dennis Duggan on the line, and so are you when you call. Yes, I did, sir. As a matter of fact, I talked about it quite often, and I think as a direct result, he is with the troops, or was with the troops, during Thanksgiving, because he was so roundly criticized for going fishing and being in Kennebunkport when the troops were marching off to maybe war. I was very critical.
I mean, they can get in touch with Dinkins over the phone very, fast. This is not like a matter of war.
Sir, it's not the same thing, and you know it, and I know it, and I thank you. Dennis, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, Barry, I did hear you lambasting Bush during that time, and part of that thing was he had this boat that gets about 2 miles to a gallon at a time when we were talking about an energy crunch and the price of gasoline was rising. So, this has nothing to do with the skin color of either one of these people. It just has to do with an attitude that they project to the electorate. And the attitude simply says, I'll go my way and you go your way. And I don't think that's the way leaders ought to behave in a crisis.
I think it was fascinating, Dennis. In the New York Post that I saw, I think it was Friday, on page 2, there was a picture of the mayor working on his backhand and at Hilton Head. I think it was the Vandermeer tennis court. I don't know what the hell it is. And there on the next page was the picture of George Bush holding a tray of food, one of those plastic jobs with compartments, wearing his camouflage hat with the troops in Saudi Arabia. Very interesting.
Yeah, very.
It looks like hell. Do you think we're going to have a war?
Yeah, I do. I think, the fact that the UN has now put up a deadline, the fact that Bush now seems to have the Russians backing him up, I don't think there's any question. I don't think you move that many people over to that far across the world and not come away with something. He's got to come away with a scalp, or the word wimp will never be erased from his vocabulary.
Do you think he's acted properly?
No, I don't. I think this is a very disturbing. You know, Vietnam is very fresh in my mind, and that particular escapade tore this country apart. And I have a feeling that this is going to happen all over again. And I see signs of it everywhere. I mean, I see signs of protest. I see conscientious objectors beginning to show up.
Yeah, well, I tell you,
what is this war about?
I have no objection to a guy being or a woman being a conscientious objector, but I really had steam coming out of my hair when I was listening to Dick Oliver today, and he had a guy on who was in the Marine Corps Reserve, and he's been drawing money for reserve duty.
Yeah, that's different. They're volunteers.
Yeah, exactly. And now suddenly, after 2 years, he decides he's a conscientious objector.
Yeah, I find that really taking advantage of a situation. He's not a true conscience objector. He's a hustler.
I think what he is about to be a flight cadet. He's about to take off from the Empire State Building.
Maybe he's a conscientious hustler. CH.
Dennis, I got to leave you. Thank you very much for being with me.
Barry, always a pleasure.
Thank you. Tell me, do you think that the mayor is going to finish his term?
I think he will. I think he'll finish his term, and I think that'll be it. And he'll fade into the sunset, and we'll get another mayor. And hopefully things will get better. Hopefully the economy will get better. Hopefully there won't be a war, although I'm not too optimistic about that. But I would bet that we will get a new mayor, that's for sure.
Yeah. I want to see an invasion of the south of France. And
now we're talking.
I'd be the first to volunteer.
I spent some time over there.
I want to be in the 1st Bikini Brigade.
Well, let me know when that happens.
I'll take you with me. You call him the murder of fiery Rabbi Meir Kahane. $300,000 for a man by the name of Nasser. And in the 30 minutes in State Supreme Court in Manhattan, Nasser, he's an Egyptian immigrant, was arraigned on charges of second-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder of a federal police officer, second-degree attempted murder, first-degree coercion, first-degree reckless endangerment, 2 counts of second-degree assault, and 3 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. And he said, not guilty. The judge, by the name of Schlesinger, set bail at $300,000 or a bond of 10% of that amount. And Nasser, who's being held on Rikers Island, was told to return to court on March the 4th. Obviously, there was a great deal of noise in the courtroom as a result of the bail announcement. By the way, the phone number of the District Attorney of Manhattan, if you want to make a phone call tomorrow, we gave you a phone number before. It has been changed. It is now 335-9000. 335-9000. Tomorrow morning, if you'll take my advice and that of the Assemblyman on the line, Assemblyman Dov Hiken, you'll make Robert Morgenthau's day and call him and tell him what you think of the bail that's been set.
I'm ashamed of my country. How could we be sure this madman won't flee the country?
Assemblyman?
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly why we're so upset, and that's exactly why you should make a phone call tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and call the District Attorney of Manhattan, Mr. Morgenthau. We have got to speak out. It's not enough to do it just on a talk show. Please make the phone call tomorrow.
335-9000. Michael, you're next.
Yes, Barry, hi. Hello, Dov.
Hi.
I'm a student at Brooklyn College, and I follow not only this situation that happened with Meir Kahane, that he was assassinated, but I also follow the Middle Eastern situation very closely. And I think that letting this guy off with $300,000 bail is an absolute travesty of justice. And I think it's a victory for the Intifada. I think that the Arabs are going to take a lot of joy in this victory, even though this man was clearly guilty. And I think that every Jew in the audience should go and call Robert Morgenthau and speak out, speak their mind, because if they don't, then it would be incredible. I'm not. The ironic thing is, I'm not a big fan of Meir Kahane. I mean, a lot of things I disagree with. I don't think he's the racist that the media claims that he was. But, I mean, as a New York citizen, I think it's outrageous that they could let this guy off with as little bail as he got.
Well, Michael, you said every Jew should call, and this is not a Jewish issue. This is a public official who was assassinated in a public forum in New York City. Every individual who cares about criminal justice, who is angry about what goes on in our system, has an opportunity now to speak out and be heard. So please do that tomorrow.
Let me refresh your memory. 16 witnesses have identified Nosair as the man who walked up to Kahana during a Zionism lecture at the Marriott Eastside Hotel and shot him in the head. He then, Nosair, shot in the leg a 73-year-old man as he tried to prevent him from fleeing. Nosair ran out of the hotel, commandeered a cab at gunpoint. A block away, he jumped out of the cab and fired shots at Carlos Acosta, who, by the way, was decorated for bravery just 2 days ago. Mr. Acosta is a uniformed officer of the U.S. Postal Service. Acosta returned fire and striking Nosair in the chin and capturing him. And that's what the assistant district attorney presented today. And after hearing all of that, the good judge, and that's heavy sarcasm, by the name of Schlesinger, who probably is going to move immediately, he awarded him bail of $300,000, actually $30,000. Judy, you're on the line.
Hi, it's Judy from Brooklyn, one of Dove Hyken's constituents. Dove knows me. I'm full agreement with Dove. And also, besides calling Morgan's lawyer's office, how about calling the judge himself? Is there any way of doing that?
Well, listen, of course that would not hurt, but Judy, why don't you join me and many others when we announce publicly his address, and you can join me maybe at an all-night vigil outside of his home. I'm going to be there in the coming days. I hope you will join me and others will too. But that's not a bad idea to call his chambers tomorrow. You can easily get the number of the judge, Judge Alvin Schlesinger. Call his chambers and express your outrage at his stabbing the criminal justice system in the back yesterday.
Jonathan, you're on the line.
Yes. I would like to ask whether this calling the judge and the district attorney will actually cause the judge to go back on his decision, or it's just a matter of protesting it?
Well, I don't think the judge, quite honestly, is going to change his position, but the DA can go over this judge and get a higher bail ruling. I think Judge Schlesinger, from the little that I know of him just from today, is the kind of individual who is not going to change his position. But we have to put him on notice as of today that we are going to be watching him from this point and on very carefully. He is going to be the judge, by the way, if this case ever comes to court.
Okay, Gil, you're on the line.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Gray and your guest. Two things I'm concerned about. First of all, number one, assassination, I don't care by whom or in whatever form, should not be condoned. The other side of the coin is that terrorism, in whatever form, must be addressed and repudiated. I do believe that very subtly, if you will, and it's not always subtle, that violence was advocated by Mr. Kahane. Now, his point of view may not have been racist, but it certainly was ethnicist. And while I have no problem with that, because I think that's very important generally, I think that this issue, or this kind of issue, has to be dealt with the same kind of standards. Idiocy, of course, may, or is, as you say, idiocy is colorblind, but it may not be ethnicity blind. And I think we have a case here where, in fact, subtly, terrorism against whomever was the enemy has been advocated by Mr. Kahane. I also understand that when, in fact, my perception is that when, in fact, this movement did not take total hold in America, then Mr. Kahane went to Israel, if I'm not mistaken, and then, of course, came back, upon which time he's assassinated. I'm not condoning the assassination.
He was also repudiated in Israel.
Okay, but the point is that now we are up in arms because here's someone who has, and please hear me, I cannot condone the assassination, but it is a kind of ethnicism that is racist in contact, okay, and yet you're sitting there, okay, and really kind of, in terms of this judge's ruling and the $300 bail and making a big issue of it, and there have been so many other cases in this country where, in fact, that kind of less bail was set, and no alarm was raised by you or Mr. Gray or anybody else.
Well, you're wrong as far as I'm concerned. You don't know anything about me if you've made a statement like that. I've raised plenty of outcry about other bail and other injudicious decisions.
Okay, let me
and
back up.
Dov Hiken has very high marks in that department. Thank you, sir. Next call after this.
Dov Hiken, I have to say, I really admire you. You're doing something that no one else has done. You are willing to go out after a judge. We don't have a judicial system. But what happened with this was outrageous. A person commits murder, and they walk off free. And the guy who steals a loaf of bread goes into the slammer. Now, I happen to go along with you fully. I'm not a constituent of yours. And every time I see a name coming up, it seems to be the guys in Brooklyn are doing more. Wouldn't you want some of us to help you along the way, that people who are not doing wrong, the lawyers and the judges, SNL, HUD are just perfect examples of it. The public, I think, has had it. We now want people like you that are not afraid to speak up. I happen to have thought Kahane was fantastic. I also didn't think he was racist, and I didn't agree with him on everything. Nobody can. Now, I want to ask you, is there some way I can come to your office and see you?
You mean just to visit me?
No, I had a problem. I had spoken to your girl, Faye. And I was supposed to see you Tuesday. You were up in Albany.
Okay, yes, of course. If you just call when I'm not in Albany, I'll be more than glad to see you. Especially since you said something nice about me, you can come and see me even if you're not a constituent. I want to point out to you that 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I was involved in demonstrating publicly outside of the Brooklyn Criminal Court against lenient judges. And I describe lenient judges as those who have a clear record of siding, of being more interested in protecting the criminals of our society than the victims of crime. So I have no problem speaking out, and I will continue to do that, regardless of who is upset at me. Barry keeps on saying a Democrat of the 48th Assembly District.
I always identify myself.
I know. I mean, I thank you for identifying me, but I'm a Democrat, and I'm sometimes something else if I believe it's best for the people, because that's really what I think we should all be interested in and not follow anything blindly.
Okay, next call from Vinny.
Hello, Barry.
Yes, sir.
Assemblyman Hiken.
Yes, sir.
I disagree probably wholeheartedly what you're doing. You found the guy guilty already. You seem like you're Alton, Maddox, and Sharpton. You get legislative by